Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another classic Clint Eastwood review. Today I'm taking a look at the 1968 action thriller Coogan's Bluff. The film is directed by Don Siegel, stars, of course, Clint Eastwood. We have Lee J. Cobb, Susan Clark, Tisha Sterling, Don Stroud and Betty Field. Now, the film follows Clint Eastwood's character, Coogan. He is a deputy sheriff in Arizona, I think, something like that. He essentially spends all his time tracking down criminals. He's a very, very good tracker, and he always gets his man. He is then sent to the big city in Manhattan to return a criminal back to his department, Don Stroud's Ringerman. When he gets to the big city, he doesn't want to follow procedure. He essentially kind of tricks his way into getting Ringerman in order to get him back home. However, he is ambushed, knocked unconscious, and he escapes. The criminal escapes. Clint Eastwood then vows not to leave the city until he tracks this criminal down. Right, what are my thoughts on Coogan's Bluff? This has always been a favourite of mine, certainly when I was young. This is one that I've got a lot of fond memories of watching when I was younger. This was, I think, at the time when I watched this, I think I'd only ever seen Clint Eastwood in westerns, so it was probably that fascination. Now, I mean, let me make myself clear. This really is a western. It's just like a western set in modern times, so to speak. Well, modern times at the time when it came out, but it is really still a western. It's almost a fish out of water story. This guy from Arizona who, practices law in a very, very different way than those in the big city in New York, but he has to kind of, in some ways, conform to how things are done in the big city, but he just won't compromise. So I'd not really seen Clint do a film like this before. Well, when I first saw this film, if you like, I'd only ever really seen him in westerns and dollar films, and I'd probably seen High Plains Drifter and Outlaw Josey Wales before this. And so I have got a bit of an affection for this, and it's probably the reason why I'm such a big fan of Red Heat, which the Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Belushi film. Now, that a lot of people wouldn't consider that to be one of Arnie's strongest films. I actually think it's a brilliant film, very, very good indeed. And the reason why it's such a good film, because essentially it's a remake of this. It's the exact same story. It is basically a remake of Coogan's Bluff. It's just, rather than Arnie on the streets on his own, he's got James Belushi as a partner sort of thing in that. But it is basically the same blueprint as this film. And that's probably why, like I say, I enjoy Red Heat so much. Now, watching this again, and it's a few years since I've seen it, watching this for this review, I can see the flaws in it. There is some pacing issues here with this film. Clint Eastwood's not really the nicest guy in this film. He's a bit of a bastard, to be perfectly honest. But it's like I've said, he's just completely uncompromising, and he will do whatever it takes to get his man, to get the criminal. And I actually think as well, the film Red Heat sets up the rivalry between Schwarzenegger and the criminal he's chasing far better, because the criminal he's chasing in that film killed his partner in Russia, so he's got a real desire to find this guy and bring him to justice. Whereas, even though we are told in this film that Clint Eastwood has tracked this character down before, it doesn't really develop or flesh out the history of these two characters together and the animosity they feel between each other. So it just feels like he's just picking up a regular prisoner who happens to escape. Like I said, there's some pacing issues. I think some of the characters could have been fleshed out a bit better. Clint Eastwood's character's not particularly likable. I think at this stage in his career, they were only interested in making him look cool, like ultra macho man sort of thing. And, them values, probably weren't even appreciated in those days. And they certainly aren't these days. So I think his character is definitely outdated here. But some of the stuff he does in this film is very, very cool. And for me, the standout scene in this film is the altercation in the bar, with the pool tables. There's a belting fight scene. And I think, again, I remember watching this as a kid, this fight scene, just being absolutely transfixed with it because it is brutal, you're really rooting for Clint's character, for Coogan here, and he absolutely puts up a great fight in this bar. He knocks 10 bells of crap out of a lot of them in the bar. And but they obviously get the better of him and he gets beaten down. But it is still the best thing about this film is that bar fight. It's absolutely brilliant. And that great scene where the aftermath of the bar, Lee J. Cobb's character, who is Lieutenant McElroy, who's a constant pain in Coogan's backside because he keeps, shouting at him. He walks into this bar, sees the aftermath of what's happened. He sees all these bodies lying around everywhere because Clint Eastwood's character has literally battered them. And he sees Coogan's hat on the floor and realizes what's happened. And you almost get that moment almost where he is actually quite pleased on the inside. And then we've got the conclusion of the film, which it does feel rushed. He uses this young girl who he's already seduced to kind of lead him to Ringerman, Don Stroud's criminal that he's chasing. So it kind of feels very, very rushed, the end of it. There's a decent bike chase and a bit of a fist fight going on at the end, but it definitely feels like they could have done something a little bit more with the ending of the film to make it feel a little bit more satisfying, I suppose. They try and give him a bit of a love interest with Susan Clark's character, Julie Roth, who's like, she works for the police, she works with the criminals and that kind of stuff, and Clint Eastwood is trying constantly to, seduce her and be the cool guy, but he ends up basically doing the dirty on her just to get his man. But there's a really odd scene at the end of the film where she's waving him off when he's going up in the helicopter to take this criminal back to Arizona, and you're just kind of thinking, God almighty, love, you must have some more self-respect than that. He treated you like dirt. But while there are moments in this film that are very much from the 60s, there are also moments in this film where it's classic Clint Eastwood. This is the first collaboration between him and Don Siegel, and we know what kind of filming relationship they went on to have. Very, very influential, certainly for Clint Eastwood, and they had a brilliant collaborate. I think they did 5 films together, so this was the start of the relationship. So yeah, I do think it's a really, really fun and classic Clint Eastwood film that's got some really fun moments. If you like Red Heat and you didn't realise really essentially that's a remake of this film, then I definitely suggest checking this one out and you will see the similarities in the both of them. So thanks for joining me for this review, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I will of course be back with plenty more reviews, classic film reviews, Clint Eastwood film reviews, whomever you want, guys. Let me know in the comments whose films you want me to see more of on the channel, and I will try and do it for you guys. I will see you very, very soon.